Hello, welcome to Expounding the Bible, and I'm your host, Nathanael Morel. And today we will talk about the subject, we will expound the Bible on the title subject, Should Christian Women Wear Pants? Are they modest? This is a subject that has been going around for a long time in the Christian church, in the Protestant churches, in the evangelical churches, and most especially in the Seventh-day Adventist church, in which I am a part of. You have basically the conservative-minded group. I wouldn't like to use the terminology conservative and liberal, but if you were to put it in that category, the conservative-minded group would start saying, no, women should not wear pants. It is not biblical. Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 says a woman should not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, and that is immodest, and that's a sin. And then you got the liberal group at the other hand, which will say, yeah, wear whatever. Women can do whatever they want. They can wear whatever dress they want, and it's all good. It's all good if you're doing it for the Lord. So we want to actually come and see that and come to the middle of it and see what does the Bible have to say about dressing modest. How can pants, I want to bring up the question, can pants be worn modest? If so, if they could be worn modest, then guess what? It's okay to wear it. And we want to decipher some of the arguments that a lot of people have against that idea. There's going to be a lot of people I know that might not like the answer in this video, but we're going to try to do the best we can from a biblical perspective. So let's open up our Bibles and go to the book of Timothy. The book of 1 Timothy chapter 2. 1 Timothy chapter 2, and we want to read the beginning part of verse 9. And this is where we pick up on Paul telling Timothy how women should dress. And 1 Timothy 2 verse 9 says, in like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array. So here Paul is saying women should adorn themselves or dress in a modest apparel that is not a modest apparel. When you look at modesty, it is a type of dress that is not too revealing and is not too sexualizing. So because if you wear an outfit that's too revealing, it can cause lust thoughts in the other person's mind. So Paul is saying that women should dress themselves in modest apparel. Now, let's hold that thought. Now let's jump over to Deuteronomy chapter 22. And this is the heart of the verse. This is the one that people really come to this verse and say, well, you see, women are forbidden to wear pants because Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 says so. And we will read that and we will see what does it have to say, because a lot of people, they come to the mindset that pants only belongs to men. Pants is only a man's clothing. But if you look throughout history, you would see that it's more than that. It's more contrary to that. Yes, pants has been more towards men, but if you look at in the ancient times of history, men also wear certain types of what women wears today, and no one says anything about it. But we don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. Right now we want to go through this. Another thing that men say before I read this is that, oh, women's pants, they came with the feminist movement when the feminists were trying to act and look like men and be like men. Well, we're going to talk about that too, because that is also a wrong concept of things. So here we are in Deuteronomy 22 verse 5, and here it says, the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are and all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. So here in Deuteronomy 22 verse 5, it clearly states, a woman shall not wear that which is a man's, and a man shall not wear that which is a woman. And this is one of the arguments that they use for women not to wear pants. They say, oh, pants belong to the men, and when women wear pants, they try to look like men, they try to be like men, and that is just a man's type of clothing. Well, there's one problem with that, because when Moses wrote this verse in Deuteronomy, there was no such thing as pants. So therefore, if there's no such thing as pants, how can you say pants belong to a man? Now, if pants were around at Moses' time, then you can say, yeah, pants belong to men and women shouldn't wear them. But pants were not around. Pants were nowhere near around. We made it seem that pants are for men. That's something that society has made it seem. Now, society puts it that pants are for everybody, which is true. But we make it seem that pants are only for men. But again, pants were nowhere near around when Moses wrote this stuff. I tell you, so then what did men used to dress with? I'll tell you what they used to dress with. The only type of dress that was around in ancient times was skirts. Both men and women wore skirts. Just like today, a lot of men and women wear pants. But back in the ancient days, both men and women wore skirts. And today, the skirts are more for the women. Today men don't wear pants much unless you go to places like Ireland and that side of Europe. Also in Hawaii, and the ancient Indians also used to wear those type of skirts. But in the real world, in terms of Israel and ancient Rome, even ancient Egyptians used to wear skirts for both genders. If you look at the picture that we're about to show you right now, and look at this picture and look at the man in the far left, and then look at the woman in the far right. What do you see in the type of dress? They're all wearing skirt. That was the typical type of clothing. They're all wearing skirts. That was the normal clothing. A skirt for a guy and a skirt for a man. It was a long sweater, as it were. I wouldn't want to say dress, but it was a long sweater with some sleeves, and a few were shorter sleeves than what the picture shows. And then they used to tie themselves with like a belt ribbon, sort of like, and then in the bottom it was basically a ancient day skirt for both men and women, as you also see in the next picture here. In the next picture, you got a picture of a man and a woman back depicting the dress of ancient Israel, and look what they're wearing. They're almost wearing the identical, almost the same style of dress. But what's the difference? And this is where people get Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 wrong. Just because pants are more for the men type, doesn't mean that they could come out with a style of dress to make it feminine too. Now, if a woman goes directly and wears a man's pants, that's where Deuteronomy chapter 22 says that's sin. If a man goes and wears directly a woman's garment, that's what the Bible says is a sin. You got, just like in the photo of ancient Israel, the clothing of ancient Israel, you got the man wearing that skirt and you got the woman wearing that skirt. They look the same, but there's a difference. A difference how the way it's made and how the way it looks. You know that one is for a man and the other one's for a woman. It's like you present yourself, if you got women's jeans, You know, just by looking how the way the jeans are, the style, the shape, and everything, you know, okay, that's for a woman. And then if you bring a man's jean, you know, those type of jeans, that pants, that's for men. You can just see it, the shape of it. Just like a t-shirt. Men and women wear t-shirts. But guess what? There's a difference in how the way the t-shirts are. If you got a woman's t-shirt, just how the way it looks, even though sometimes the material and even how the way the shoulders are and how the way the waist part is of the t-shirt, you know, that looks like a woman's dress. Then you get a man's t-shirt, how the way the shoulders are, how the way the waist frame is, you go, that's a man's t-shirt. Is the same type of clothing, but it's different. It's a different distinction for different genders. Now, if a woman goes and gets a man's t-shirt and wears it, that's what the Bible calls sin. If a man goes and buys a woman's t-shirt and wears it, that's what the Bible calls sin. Not that they can't wear the same style of clothing fit for their own genders. That may look the same, but it's not. That's not what Deuteronomy is talking about. But that's what people make Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 5 talk about. They say, you see, here it says that a woman cannot wear that which pertaineth unto a man. Pants are for men. And women are not allowed to wear it because that is a man's garment. Well, back in the ancient days, men used to wear skirts. Today, skirts are a woman's garment. What do you have to say to that? And a lot of people, they don't even deal with that aspect because they don't study it out. So why did the men wear skirts? Was it a sin for men to wear skirts back in ancient days? No, because you got the same type of clothing, just like pants today, the same type of clothing, just a distinction to tell that's for one gender and that's for the other gender. Now, if one gender wants to wear the other gender's clothing, that's what the Bible calls sin. So, you may start asking then, how did pants come about? What was the reason for pants? And how in society did women start wearing pants? And for what reason? Because people say it was from the feminist movement, and the feminist movement is a movement not supported by scripture. So they say, oh, the feminist movement brought in a revolution of fashion, and they wanted to act like men, so they started wearing men's pants. Yeah, there is some places where they started wearing men's pants, which is sin. They started wearing the actual pants that belong to a man. But when you look at history and you look at the start of them manufacturing women's pants, official women's pants, that had nothing to do with the feminist movement. But let's start the timeline, because I'm going to get ahead of myself if I keep on going. Let's start the timeline. What brought about pants in the first place? Well, as we saw in the picture, that both genders wore skirts. Over time, when you got to the medieval times, and I want to say about the year 1900 of that area, pants started to be manufactured. They started to be made, this time for men. The men's fashion of clothing right now was changing. And the women, they stayed wearing the skirt, even though skirts for women changed also, but they stayed with their skirt dress. But for the men, the fashion of clothing was changing. Men started wearing less of that old-fashioned, ancient style of dress, as we saw in the picture, and they started acquiring more and more, as what we will show you now in this picture, of medieval times. And if you look at the man, he's dressed with his garments on top, and if you look at his legs, they're basically covered with a pants-like garment. They were almost half pants and half leggings, if you may want to put it that way. A few of them actually were leggings they used to wear, but they were basically half leggings and half pants. And then they were basically covered with a short mini skirt around a little lower than the waist area. So again, leggings actually started to become, today they're known as women's clothing, but back in medieval days when they first started coming out, they started out as men's clothing, and over time the fashion changed and it became women's clothing instead. And when you then you look at the picture later on in medieval times, I want to say about the 15th century, around the 1600s, the style of clothing already started to change, as you see in the picture, that you got the regular garment on the top, and then in the bottom for his legs you got the pants for the man, and basically they are not being covered anymore by a short skirt anymore. And by the time you get to the 1800s in America, people were already wearing pants without anything. And I'm talking about men, not women. Women, throughout this whole time, women stayed with their dress of skirts, but men became known as the gender to be wearing pants. Why? Because it made the work a lot more easier. It made battle a lot more easier. It was even warmer for them in the winter time. And basically that's how the pants all started coming about. And then for the women, they basically didn't have the same thing as men did. They stayed with their dress. Usually by the time the 1800s came, you had the fashion of the Victorian dress, and basically that was the normal style of dress for the whole entire time. And when you look at that dress, it was really a heavy dress. It was anywhere from 8 to 14 pound dress, which made it a heavy burden on women when they do their work and when they do physical work. And basically it was a multi-layered skirt, which means it used to make them hot a lot in the summertime. And basically they needed to find a solution for that. And one solution is around the time of 1914, 1913, around that area, they started coming out with official women's pants. The type of pants similar to the ones we have today. And it caused a big uproar around society, saying, how can they do this? This is just only going to make things worse for women. They're going to try to be as men. And a lot of people try to say it was the cause of the feminist movement. But again, the feminist movement could have cared less at this time about dress changes. They were more concerned with voting rights and equal pay for equal work. They were more concerned with that than the changes on dress and pants. It wasn't until the sexual revolution of the feminist movement in the 1960s and 70s that they actually started pushing for women to wear pants to look like men. But when the pants started to come out in the early 1900s, the feminist movement didn't have almost anything to do with that. They used it afterwards, but when it first came out, it wasn't so. It's almost like the rainbow. The rainbow was created by God as a sign to mankind, especially Noah, that God will never flood the earth again. Now, over time, the rainbow has been used as a symbol of the LGBT community. But that doesn't make the rainbow bad. It was used for another reason, but its original purpose was a sign from God. The same thing as pants. Pants were made for the sole purpose of making a woman's work a lot more easier, instead of her having to carry that heavy dress. And also, as I wrote I did a few studying here about the reason why pants were made, and this is what came out. In America, the country was moving west. The population was moving west towards the California area, Oregon, Wyoming, Colorado, Rocky Mountain area, and in that region there, women had to wear pants as a practical necessity. It was very hard, I wouldn't say impossible, but it was very hard for a woman to wear a skirt. The skirt went all the way down to the woman's leg, and all the terrain, rocky mountains and all that stuff, a woman will have a hard time walking and would trip a lot. Also, in that part of the West country, the West was no place for skirts. It was very muddy. It was very dusty, and again, the skirts were very heavy. And with the hills going up and down and that very muddy, dusty, rocky area, it would make it very hard for a skirt, very heavy, going all the way down almost to your feet, to be walking. And it would also hinder the physical labor required in that region. The farm work, the yard work that a woman had to do in that area. So they started coming out with women's pants as a solution, as an option to make a woman's life, a woman's work a lot more easier, especially since the change in society was moving towards the West, which was a more tougher region. As we said again, the feminist movement didn't have much to do with that coming out, and that is the reason why, especially, women's pants were started to come out. And I've seen a lot of especially Adventists, and they say, well, here it says, Ellen White says that a woman should wear skirts and no pants. Only skirts. So explain that. And I'm over here and I'm thinking, and I said, well, the reason why Ellen White only says, and I respect Ellen White a lot, everything she says is from God, but the reason why she would say for you to wear only skirts is because skirts was the only type of dress that was around at her time. Skirts, pants didn't start. Pants weren't invented yet at her time. They didn't start to come out until the time of her death. Again, they started coming out around the 1914, 1913 area. And they didn't become officially popular until almost the 1920s. Ellen White died in 1915, so that wouldn't give her time to even write about the style of dress. She didn't say anything about it. So and so you might be wondering, if skirts was the only thing that was around on her time, why then would she say only wear skirts? If skirts was the only thing available, well, she's writing and telling you how to wear your skirt. When she says women wear skirts, she's going to tell you how to wear your skirts. What's the proper way of wearing your skirt? But she's not going to write about pants, women's pants, because they were not around. Now, she does write of a type of pants for women that was around, and it wasn't even pants. It was back then they called it pants in those days, but if you look at it today, they were not pants. They were like a type of pants, but they weren't really pants. It was basically almost like a legging stocking, but sort of thick a little, that it made them to call it pants. And she says that style of clothing is perfectly okay and modest. And if you want where it's found in the Health Reformer, May 1st, 1872, paragraph 13. If you want to look that up, she says that the women should be clothed with pants to protect their legs, especially in the winter time. And she writes about that style of dress. She says it is modest, and etc. So, but again, those were not the real pants that we are talking about today. They looked like pants. They were basically an early form of pants, but they weren't the official type that we're talking about. But yet again, the official type, the pants for women that we know today, were made for the sole purpose of the women's work to make them a lot more easier. Now, by the time 1950 came about, pants were already started to use as regular fashion. Housework, going to work, regular job work, going out and stuff like that. Pants basically dominated the society of fashion because it was a much more easier dress and a much more better. Instead of having skirts were still worn, but pants made a big comeback because they were more easier to put on, more easier to go and walk around with and stuff. And women also wanted to do more exercising, and when you do exercise, it's very hard to do that with a skirt, so they would prefer to do it with pants. So as more available, as women started to do more things in society, the activities that they would want to do would actually prefer them to wear pants over skirts. So what makes then why is everybody talking so bad about the pants then? If pants are supposed to be so good for women to make their work a lot more easier and stuff like that, why the backlash, especially from the more conservative minded group? Well, I would say again, we already studied Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 5 that says a woman should not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, and a man should not wear that pertaineth unto a woman. Again, we're just going back through it again before we move to the next step. Again, pants are a type of clothing that started out for men, but they also started making women's style of pants, just like leggings started out for men, but now it's for women, and no one says anything about it. And today, men usually don't wear leggings as much as women do. It's become more of a women's style of clothing. Just like back then, when Moses wrote this, both genders used to wear skirts. But there was a difference in how the skirt was. You know that one skirt was a man and one skirt was a woman. If a woman were to wear a man's skirt, that would be sin. If a man was to wear a woman's skirt, that is what the Bible will call sin. Not that you cannot get two types, not that you cannot get the same style of clothing and basically make one for a man and one for a woman, and the woman one is wrong. That's not what it's talking about. And we see that over history, that we know that pants were not around when this verse was written, but they started coming around around the medieval time, and society changed the way of dress for men from the skirts to half pants, half mini skirts, and eventually all pants. That is how the society has changed from Moses' time all the way now. And we see that the society started changing. It took took a good while, but it started changing around the 1900s, from women wearing skirts to now wearing pants, for the same reason that the fashion changed for the men from skirts to pants, the same reason it changed for women too. So now we want to move on to the next thing. We talked about in the beginning, Paul says the women's dress should be modest. So what is a modest way of wearing pants? Well, a modest way of wearing pants is wearing loose pants, because not only is it good for your health wearing loose clothing, but it is not too revealing of the woman's parts. Tight pants reveal a woman's body parts that men would usually go and lust after. If you were to wear a tight pants, I would recommend you wearing a shirt or sweater or jacket over the upper hips of the thigh area down here, so then it could hide that part, so that men won't start looking, because tight clothing reveals the body parts. So I would recommend you women to block that with a shirt, a long shirt or a sweater or something. But the more preferable use of pants would be to wear loose pants, pants that are not tight and are not too revealing. Again, I want to lay the fact that pants had little to do with the feminist movement. It wasn't until the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s that after the women got their victory over equal pay, equal work, and over the victory of voting rights, etc., they started to switch to now targeting the clothing fashion, and they wanted to now look like men. So they came out with different style of clothing, and this is one thing that they came out that I find it hard that ministers allow, is that when I see ministers and pastors, and they may be good pastors, but when I see them talking against pants, and basically the only thing they can come up with is that it belongs to a man, which we already dealt with that, and that they are too tight and too revealing, which we are almost already dealt with that. If that's a problem, that pants are too tight, simple, wear it loose. Now, the problem I have with these ministers is they may talk against pants, and they say, oh, it makes you look like men, it's more of a man's clothing, which we already dealt with that, but they're saying it looks more like a man's clothing as part of the feminist movement. Yet, many times when they're condemning pants, because pants, according to them, is part of the feminist movement, which we know it wasn't if you study history, and according to them, they say, oh, pants, part of the feminist movement and makes you look like a man, yet their own wives are wearing a blazer. I haven't looked at the word much. It's a woman's suit, basically. And I go, wait a minute, you don't see anything wrong with that? Because if you study history, that women's suit has more ties to the feminist movement than pants do. That style of dress, women's suits, especially their jackets, which a lot of women wear in the church, that was made almost for the sole purpose by the feminist movement to look like men. So they're condemning pants when we just studied that pants have nothing to deal with the feminist movement, and they're condemning pants, but yet their wives or their daughters or their congregations are wearing a woman's suit jacket, which is more man-looking than pants are. And it has more ties to the feminist movement than pants are. And I'm over here saying that's hypocritical. Because how are you going to condemn pants, but you're not going to condemn the jacket? That is part of a woman's suit. Now again, if you want to wear the jacket, that's fine. That's totally fine with me. I'm not telling you to stop it, but if you're wearing it for the purpose of looking like a man, or to get or to look like the authority of a man, that's sinful. If you're wearing it because that's the best thing you got, hey, that's fine. But and a lot of women, they wear it out of ignorance, but I'm just saying that why preach against pants if you're going to allow your woman to wear a different style of clothing that has more ties to the feminist movement than the pants do? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's what, and again, it was brought out in the sexual revolution, which was the second wave of the feminist movement in the 60s and 70s, and the women's suit has become big, especially in the business world. And again, if you want to wear the jacket, that's fine. I'm not going to condemn you for it. But if you're going to wear it, if you're wearing it to look like a man, that's what the Bible calls sin. And tight pants are just as sinful as wearing a short miniskirt, because a short miniskirt is revealing too. And loose pants are just as modest as a long skirt, a good size skirt that's modest. That will be in the same category, because it's a modest way of wearing the pants. So rather than saying all pants are bad, listen, loose pants, not revealing, and they're loose, which means the blood will flow and it'll be good, better for your health. That's modest. That's what the Bible calls being immodest. tight pants that are revealing, that reveal the body parts that men lust after, that is immodest, and that is lustful and sinful. That's what the Bible calls not being modest. And again, pants are not a man's clothing. Pants are for both genders, just like back in the ancient days, skirts were for both genders. Now today in society, we have skirts more as the woman's gender, but they were both. Today in society, we have leggings as a woman's clothing. Back in medieval days, leggings were actually started with men's clothing. It's the same thing with stockings. So that's what the Bible has to say about dressing in a modest way, and dressing, making sure that you are not wearing the opposite gender's dress. And that's what basically I've wanted to bring out. This subject has been in my mind for almost a year now, and I see arguments on both sides. So I said, listen, we have to make a video so that we can find the middle ground for it. And again, the whole matter is, pants are legal to wear. They are people that say that pants are not for women, they are for men. That's more of a legalistic term, because you're shrinking down the fashion. Then it just doesn't make any sense when you're studying it. It's almost legalistic when you try to assume that women cannot wear pants because it looks like a man. Well, how can you say that when, again, we said back in the day, men used to wear skirts. No one says anything about that. But then they want to make a big deal that women are wearing pants. And I'm just like, that makes no sense. So overall, we want to end up with that pants are modest to wear if they are worn modest. If they're tight, they are immodest. If they're loose, they are modest. I'm not saying for you to give up wearing your skirts. If that's all you want to wear, that's fine. But I'm just telling you that a modest skirt is the same as modest pants. If you want to make your physical work a lot more easier, you can do so. And outdoor activities are much more easier to do than skirts. Now, if you are going to church, I would prefer you wear a skirt, because again, you're not doing no physical activity, or you're not doing much at the church other than sitting down. Especially if you are going to go on the platform, I would especially recommend you wearing a skirt. But again, during weekdays, everyday work, physical work, housework, if you want to wear pants, go ahead. If you want to wear pants in outdoor activity or just hang out, hey, you can do so. Just make sure that they're modestly worn, and they are modestly worn loose. If they are tight, wear something over the body parts that cause lust in the man's mind. If you're not going to cover that up, then they are completely immodest, and I would recommend you wearing a more loose pants. So then that part of the area would not be much exposed. So that's what has to be dealt with. That's what I wanted to bring out. That's what the Bible calls modesty, and believe it or not, a lot of people think that this is an irrational thought, but it's actually very true. Women that are modest, that's what men look for. They like women that are modest, because that shows godliness, and that shows good virtueness. You want to take care of yourself and be pure. You don't want to be wild and show your whole body out to people. So I don't want to offend anybody. I'm just saying that's how the Bible would call it. So that's the situation of things. So that's what I want to bring out. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please press like. Also subscribe. We are also on Facebook. Until then, this is your host, Nathanael Morel, saying have a blessed day.